Violet Keller's trembling fingers reached through the wooden slats of the henhouse, desperation etched into every line of her weary face. The crowing rooster announced dawn's arrival across the dusty plains of Wyoming Territory, 1878, but she had no time to admire the golden sunlight spilling over the distant mountains. Her baby brother was starving, and desperate times called for desperate measures. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, miss." The deep voice startled her so badly she nearly toppled backward into the dirt. Spinning around, Violet found herself staring up at a tall man silhouetted against the rising sun. His broad shoulders were framed by the dusty horizon, a worn Stetson pulled low over his eyes. One hand rested casually on his holstered pistol, not threatening, but a clear reminder of its presence. "I wasn't," she began, but the words died in her throat. What was the point of lying? She'd been caught red-handed, trying to steal eggs from a stranger's henhouse. The man stepped closer, and Violet instinctively backed away, her thin calico dress billowing slightly in the early morning breeze. Her hair, the color of burnished copper, had mostly escaped its practical braid during her 2-day journey on foot. "You weren't what? Stealing eggs from my chickens?" His voice wasn't as harsh as his words might suggest. There was something in his tone, curiosity, perhaps, or even amusement. Violet straightened her spine, summoning what little dignity she had left. "My brother is hungry. He's only 4. I didn't know what else to do." The man's expression softened slightly as he took in her appearance, the worn shoes, the patched dress, the exhaustion evident in her green eyes. He pushed his hat back, revealing a face weathered by sun and wind, with a strong jaw covered in stubble that was several days old. He couldn't have been more than 30, but life had clearly not been easy on him. "Where's your brother now?" he asked, glancing around as if expecting to see a small child hiding somewhere nearby. "In town. I left him with a kind woman who runs the general store while I—" She gestured helplessly toward the henhouse. The man nodded slowly, considering. "You walked all the way out here from Timber Creek." "That's 5 miles at least." "Yes, sir." He studied her for a long moment, then sighed, removing his hat and running a hand through his dark hair. "My name's Owen Parker. This is my ranch." "Violet Keller," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Owen nodded, then did something unexpected. He opened the henhouse door, reached inside, and collected 6 eggs in his large hands. He offered them to Violet. "Take these," he said. "And the hen, too, if you want. That speckled one, there has been a good layer." Violet stared at him in disbelief. "I can't possibly. You can take the hen and stay too if you need a place," Owen continued, as if he hadn't heard her objection. "I've got an extra room in the house. Better than whatever situation drove you to stealing eggs at sunrise." Her eyes widened. "Why would you help me?" "You don't know me." Owen's expression was unreadable. "Let's just say I know what it's like to be responsible for someone else when times are hard." He gestured toward the farmhouse in the distance. "Come on. I've got coffee brewing, and you look like you could use some breakfast yourself before you head back to your brother." Violet hesitated, weighing her options. Trust didn't come easily after everything she'd been through, but she was exhausted, hungry, and desperate. And there was something about Owen Parker's straightforward manner that made her want to believe him. "The hen stays here for now," she finally said, "but I'll accept the eggs and the coffee if you're sure." A ghost of a smile crossed Owen's face. "I'm sure." As they walked toward the house, Violet couldn't help but notice how the rising sun glinted off the weathered wood of the modest but well-maintained structure. A proper ranch house, with a porch that wrapped around the front, smoke curling from the stone chimney. It had been so long since she'd been in a real home. "How long have you been on your own with your brother?" Owen asked as they approached the house. "Almost a year now," Violet replied, her voice tight with memories she tried to keep buried. "Our parents died of influenza last winter. We've been making our way west ever since, looking for work." Owen nodded, as if her story was one he'd heard before or perhaps lived himself. "And what brought you to Timber Creek specifically?" I heard there was work in the laundry, but when we arrived yesterday, the position had already been filled. Violet clutched the eggs carefully to her chest. We spent what little money we had left on a room for last night, but today... She trailed off, not needing to explain further. They reached the porch, and Owen held the door open for her. The interior of the house was surprisingly tidy for a bachelor rancher. A pot of coffee simmered on the cast iron stove, and the main room was dominated by a solid wooden table with 4 chairs. Simple furnishings, but clean and well kept. "Have a seat," Owen said, gesturing to the table. "I'll scramble some of these eggs. You can take the rest back to your brother." Violet sat down gingerly, still feeling like an intruder despite the invitation. "Do you live here alone, Mr. Parker?" "Owen," he corrected. "And yes, just me and the ranch hands, though they've got their own quarters out back. My father left me this place when he passed 5 years ago." As he spoke, Owen moved efficiently around the kitchen, cracking eggs into a pan and stirring them with practiced motions. There was something incongruously gentle about the way this large, rough-hewn man handled such a domestic task. "You must be good at running the ranch," Violet observed, her hunger momentarily forgotten as she watched him work. "Everything seems well maintained." A shadow passed across Owen's face. "We get by. Cattle prices aren't what they used to be, and we've had 2 dry years in a row, but we're holding on." He slid a plate of eggs in front of her. "Eat. You need your strength." The food was simple but tasted better than anything Violet had eaten in months. She tried not to devour it too quickly, conscious of her manners despite her hunger. "Now," Owen said, sitting across from her with his own plate, "tell me about this brother of yours." "Samuel," Violet said, her expression softening at the thought of the tousle-haired boy waiting for her in town. "He's bright and curious about everything, too curious sometimes. He asks questions from sunrise to sunset." Owen smiled, and the expression transformed his face, softening the hard lines and bringing a warmth to his blue eyes. "Sounds like a handful." "He is," Violet agreed, feeling some of her tension ease. "But he's all I have left in this world." They finished eating in companionable silence. When Violet had cleared her plate, Owen wrapped the remaining eggs carefully in a cloth. "I meant what I said earlier," he told her, handing her the bundle. "About staying, there's plenty of work to be done around here, and I could use an extra pair of hands with the cooking and such. The room isn't much, but it's clean, and your brother would be welcome too." Violet stared at him. "Why would you offer that to a woman you caught stealing from you?" Owen's gaze was steady. "Because I've been in places dark enough to know that sometimes good people do desperate things, and because this house has been too empty for too long." The honesty in his voice made Violet's chest tighten. It had been so long since anyone had shown her genuine kindness without expecting something in return. "I don't know," she said finally. "I'll need to think about it. Talk to Samuel." Owen nodded. "Fair enough. My offer stands. In the meantime, I'll hitch up the wagon and take you back to town." "No sense in you walking all that way again." The ride to Timber Creek was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Violet found herself studying Owen's profile as he guided the horses along the rutted dirt road. There was a steadiness to him that she found reassuring after months of uncertainty. When they reached the general store, Violet spotted Samuel immediately. He was sitting on the porch steps, his thin legs swinging as he watched people pass by on the dusty Main Street. When he saw Violet, his face lit up with a smile that never failed to make her heart ache with love and responsibility. "Vi," he called, rushing toward the wagon. "You were gone so long. Mrs. Thompson let me help stock shelves and gave me a peppermint stick." Violet climbed down from the wagon and caught her brother in a tight hug. "I'm sorry I was gone so long, but look what I've brought." She showed him the eggs, and his eyes widened with delight. Eggs, real eggs. Then, noticing Owen for the first time, Samuel's expression turned cautious. "Who's that?" "This is Mr. Parker," Violet said. "He helped me get the eggs." Owen tipped his hat to the boy. "Pleased to meet you, Samuel. Your sister tells me you ask a lot of questions." Samuel nodded solemnly. I want to know about everything, especially horses. Do you have horses? I do, Owen replied, a smile tugging at his lips. Several of them. Samuel looked up at Violet with sudden excitement. Can we see them, Vi, please? Violet hesitated, looking from her brother's hopeful face to Owen's. The cowboy's expression was open, patient, waiting for her decision without pressuring her one way or the other. Mr. Parker has offered us a place to stay at his ranch, she said finally, with work for me and a room for both of us. Samuel's eyes grew round. A real ranch. With chickens and cows and everything? And horses, Owen added. One of my mares just had a foal. He's about 2 months old now, still finding his legs. That settled it for Samuel. He turned to Violet with an expression of pure pleading. Can we go, Vi, please? Violet looked at Owen, searching his face for any sign of deception or hidden motives. She found none, only the same steady patience and something else she couldn't quite name. Maybe it was loneliness, or maybe just the simple decency of a man who understood what it meant to struggle. We can try it, she said at last, for a little while. The relief on Samuel's face made her decision worthwhile, regardless of what might come. And if she was being honest with herself, the prospect of a stable roof over their heads and regular meals was almost too good to pass up, even if it meant putting her trust in a stranger. I need to settle our bill with Mrs. Thompson and get our things, Violet said. Owen nodded. I'll wait here. An hour later, with their meager possessions loaded in the back of the wagon, they set out for the Parker Ranch. Samuel chattered excitedly the entire way, peppering Owen with questions about ranch life that the man answered with surprising patience. As they crested the final hill and the ranch came into view, Violet felt a strange mixture of trepidation and hope. It wasn't much a modest house, a barn, various outbuildings, and fenced pastures where cattle grazed in the distance, but compared to the uncertainty they'd been living with, it looked like a haven. Home sweet home, Owen said, guiding the horses toward the house. Violet didn't correct him, didn't say that this wasn't their home, might never be their home. Instead, she watched as Samuel bounced with excitement beside her, his face alight with wonder at the prospect of this new adventure. For his sake, she would make this work. She would earn her keep, repay Owen's kindness, and continue to care for her brother. And maybe, just maybe, they might find a measure of peace in this unexpected place. As Owen helped her down from the wagon, his hand warm and steady around hers, Violet felt something she hadn't experienced in a very long time, the faintest flicker of hope. The first week at the Parker Ranch passed in a blur of adjustments and discoveries. Violet quickly fell into the rhythm of ranch life, rising before dawn to prepare breakfast for Owen and his 3 ranch hands, Hank, Miguel, and Joe, before turning her attention to the countless other tasks that needed doing. She cleaned the long, neglected house until it shone, mended clothes that had been hastily patched by inexpert male hands, and took over the cooking of all meals, using skills her mother had taught her to stretch ingredients into hearty, satisfying fare. Samuel, for his part, thrived in this new environment. Owen, true to his word, introduced the boy to the horses, including the wobbly-legged foal that immediately became Samuel's favorite. Under the cowboy's watchful eye, Samuel helped with small chores suited to his age and size, collecting eggs, legitimately now, feeding the chickens, and carrying water to the house. On the 8th day, as Violet hung laundry on the line behind the house, Owen approached her, his expression thoughtful. You've been working from sunup to sundown every day, he observed. I didn't bring you here to work you to death. Violet pinned a shirt to the line, avoiding his gaze. I want to earn our keep. You've been more than generous, taking us in. Still, everyone needs rest. Owen leaned against a post, watching her efficient movements. Tomorrow's Sunday. The men always get that day off, and so should you. I thought we might all ride into town for church, if you're amenable. Violet paused, a damp sheet in her hands. Church? Unless you're opposed to the idea. No, not at all. It's just been a while. The The truth was, Violet had stopped attending church after her parents died, her faith shaken by the cruelty of a world that would leave 2 children alone and defenseless. But Samuel had always loved the Sunday services, the music, and the community of it. Well, Preacher Williams gives a mercifully short sermon, and the ladies always put together a fine spread afterward, Owen said with a small smile. And I thought Samuel might enjoy the outing. He would, Violet agreed, returning to her task. Thank you for thinking of him. Owen was quiet for a moment, watching her work. I think of both of you, he said finally, his voice softer than usual. I want you to be comfortable here, Violet, not just grateful, but at home. The sincerity in his voice made her look up, really look at him. The sun caught in his dark hair, highlighting strands of copper she hadn't noticed before. His blue eyes were intent on her face, searching for something. We are comfortable, she assured him. More than I could have hoped for when you caught me stealing your eggs. A smile crept across his face. Not my finest moment, threatening a desperate woman. You didn't threaten me, Violet corrected him. You offered help when most would have offered handcuffs. Owen shrugged, looking almost embarrassed. Anyone would have done the same. No, Violet said firmly. They wouldn't have. She'd learned that lesson all too well during the hard months after her parents' deaths. Before Owen could respond, Samuel came tearing around the corner of the house, his face flushed with excitement. Vi, Joe is teaching me to lasso. Come see. He grabbed her hand, tugging insistently. Violet laughed, glancing at Owen. Duty calls, it seems. So it does, he agreed, falling into step beside them as Samuel dragged Violet toward the corral where the ranch hand was demonstrating the proper technique for swinging a rope. As they watched Samuel's clumsy but enthusiastic attempts, Owen leaned closer to Violet. He's a good boy, he said quietly. You've done well with him, considering everything. The simple compliment warmed her more than it should have. I've tried, she replied. Sometimes I worry it's not enough. It is, Owen assured her. More than enough. His words stayed with her throughout the evening as she prepared dinner, served it, and later tucked Samuel into the small bed in the room they shared. The boy fell asleep almost instantly, exhausted from his day of adventure, but Violet found herself wide awake, her mind turning over Owen's kindness again and again. She slipped out of the room and onto the porch, where the night air was cool and fragrant with sage. The vast expanse of stars above the Wyoming plains never failed to take her breath away, a reminder of how small her troubles were in the grand scheme of things. The creak of the door startled her, and she turned to find Owen stepping onto the porch, a steaming cup in each hand. Thought you might like some tea, he said, offering her one of the cups. Couldn't sleep. Violet accepted the tea gratefully. Too many thoughts. You. Same. He settled onto the porch swing, leaving room for her to join him if she wished. After a moment's hesitation, she did. They sat in companionable silence for a while, sipping their tea and watching the stars. It was Owen who finally spoke. Can I ask what happened? After your parents passed, Violet tensed slightly, but found she didn't mind the question as much as she would have expected. We were in Nebraska. My father had a small farm, but after they died, the bank took it. Said there were debts I didn't know about. Her grip tightened on the cup. Samuel and I stayed with neighbors for a while, but they could barely feed their own children. So I got work as a seamstress in town, and we rented a small room. Owen listened intently, his face grave in the moonlight. It was enough for a while, Violet continued. But then the shop owner's daughter returned from school back east, and she needed the position after that. She shrugged. We moved on. Town to town, job to job. I've been a laundress, a dishwasher, a maid, anything to keep a roof over our heads and food in Samuel's belly. And that led you here, Owen said softly. To my henhouse at dawn. Despite herself, Violet smiled. To your henhouse at dawn, she agreed. Not my proudest moment. I'm glad it happened, Owen admitted. The house was too quiet before. The men and I were more like a unit than a family, having you and Samuel here. He trailed off, seemingly unsure how to finish the thought. It's different, Violet supplied. Better, Owen corrected. Much better. Their eyes met in the darkness, and Violet felt a strange flutter in her chest, like a bird taking wing. She looked away quickly, uncomfortable with the feeling. I should get some rest, she said, rising from the swing. Especially if we're going to church tomorrow. Owen stood as well, taking her empty cup. Of course. Sleep well, Violet. Good night, Owen, she replied, the use of his first name still feeling slightly foreign on her tongue. As she slipped back into the bedroom, careful not to wake Samuel, Violet tried to ignore the warmth that had spread through her at Owen's words. Better. He thought their presence made things better. The idea was both comforting and terrifying, because what happened when he inevitably changed his mind? Sunday morning dawned clear and bright. Violet woke early from habit, but forced herself to remain in bed a little longer, honoring Owen's insistence that she take the day off. When she did rise, she carefully unpacked the one good dress. She owned a simple blue cotton that had once belonged to her mother and had been altered to fit her smaller frame. Samuel was excited about the prospect of going to town, chattering happily as she helped him into his best shirt and attempted to tame his unruly hair with a damp comb. "Do you think they'll have cake after church, like back home?" he asked, squirming under her ministrations. "I don't know, but Owen mentioned food of some sort," Violet replied, finally satisfied with his appearance. "Now, remember your manners today. These people will be our neighbors, at least for now." Samuel nodded solemnly. "I promise." When they emerged from their room, Owen was waiting in the main room, dressed in clean clothes with his hair still damp from washing. He looked different somehow, less the rugged rancher and more the respectable landowner, though the transformation wasn't complete. There was still that wildness about him, contained but not eliminated by the Sunday clothes. His eyes widened slightly when he saw Violet in her blue dress, her copper hair neatly braided and pinned. "You look very nice," he said, the slight hesitation betraying more than his words. "Thank you," Violet replied, feeling strangely self-conscious. "So do you." The ride to town was pleasant, with Samuel pointing out interesting sights along the way and asking Owen endless questions about the church and the people they would meet. Violet found herself relaxing, enjoying the simple pleasure of a Sunday outing after so many months of constant struggle. Timber Creek's church was a modest white clapboard building with a small steeple. By the time they arrived, most of the town's residents were already filing inside. Owen helped Violet down from the wagon, his hand lingering on hers for just a moment longer than necessary. "Folks will be curious," he warned her quietly. "I haven't exactly made a habit of bringing anyone to church with me before." Violet nodded, understanding the implication. "We'll follow your lead." Inside, the church was filled with the murmur of conversation and the rustle of Sunday clothes. Heads turned as they entered, curious gazes taking in the unexpected sight of Owen Parker with a woman and child. Owen nodded politely to various acquaintances as he guided Violet and Samuel to a pew about halfway up the aisle. "Owen Parker, as I live and breathe," a plump, gray-haired woman exclaimed, approaching them before they could sit. "Who have you brought with you today?" Owen smiled. "Mrs. Whitaker, may I present Miss Violet Keller and her brother Samuel. They're staying at the ranch for a while. Violet, Samuel, this is Mrs. Whitaker, who knows everything about everyone in Timber Creek." Mrs. Whitaker swatted Owen's arm good-naturedly. "Don't you go giving me a reputation, young man." "I simply take an interest in my community." She turned her attention to Violet. "It's lovely to meet you, dear. We don't often see new faces around here, especially not ones attached to our confirmed bachelor rancher." Violet felt her cheeks warm. "Owen has been very kind to us. We're grateful for his hospitality." "I'm sure you are," Mrs. Whitaker replied with a knowing twinkle in her eye that made Violet's blush deepen. "And you, young man," she continued, addressing Samuel, "I happen to know there are some excellent molasses cookies at the social after service. You make sure to find me and I'll point you in the right direction." Samuel's face lit up. "Yes, madam," As Mrs. Whittaker moved away to greet other arrivals, more introductions followed. The general store owner and his wife, the blacksmith and his family, the town doctor Violet struggled to remember all the names and faces. Everyone was polite, though she could sense the undercurrent of curiosity about her relationship with Owen. Finally, Preacher Williams called the congregation to order, and the service began. The familiar rhythm of hymns and prayers washed over Violet, bringing back memories of Sundays with her parents. Samuel sat between her and Owen, his small legs swinging as he tried to follow along with the hymnal Owen shared with them. During the sermon, Violet found her attention wandering. She glanced sideways at Owen, who was listening attentively to the preacher's words. In profile, his strong features were even more pronounced: the straight nose, the firm jaw, the surprisingly long eyelashes. As if sensing her gaze, he turned slightly, meeting her eyes. A small smile curved his lips before he returned his attention to the sermon. That strange, fluttering sensation returned to Violet's chest, and she forced herself to focus on Preacher Williams's words about community and caring for one's neighbors. It would not do to develop any sort of attachment to Owen Parker. Their arrangement was temporary, a respite from hardship, nothing more. After the service, the congregation moved to the church hall for the social. Tables laden with food lined the walls, and the room quickly filled with the hum of conversation. Samuel, true to his nature, quickly made friends with several local children and was soon engaged in a game of tag in the churchyard. Violet found herself surrounded by curious women, all eager to learn more about the mysterious young woman staying at the Parker Ranch. "How long have you known Owen?" asked a young woman who had been introduced as the schoolteacher, Miss Lily Roberts. "Not long," Violet admitted. "We met rather unexpectedly." She wasn't about to share the true circumstances of their meeting, "And you're working as his housekeeper?" inquired another woman, the dressmaker's wife. "In a manner of speaking, yes," Violet replied carefully. "Owen has been very generous to my brother and me during a difficult time." "That sounds like Owen," Mrs. Whittaker interjected, joining the group. "He's always had a soft heart, though he tries to hide it behind that gruff cowboy exterior. Ever since his father passed and left him the ranch, he's thrown himself into work. It's good to see him taking an interest in something else for a change." Violet wasn't sure how to respond to that, but was saved by Owen's timely appearance at her side. "I hope these ladies aren't overwhelming you with questions," he said, his hand coming to rest lightly at the small of her back. "Not at all," Violet assured him, though she was grateful for the rescue. "Everyone has been very welcoming." "Owen was just telling some of us that you're quite the cook," Dr. Adams commented, approaching with a plate of food. "Said you've improved the meals at the ranch considerably." Violet glanced at Owen in surprise. "That's very kind of him to say." "It's the truth," Owen replied simply. "Best meals we've had since my mother was alive." The conversation shifted to more general topics, and Violet gradually relaxed, finding herself enjoying the simple pleasure of social interaction after months of isolation. She watched as Owen chatted easily with the townspeople, respected and well-liked by all appearances. There was a comfort in seeing him in this context, a different side to the solitary rancher she was coming to know. As the afternoon wore on, Samuel returned to her side, flushed with exertion and happiness, his pockets mysteriously bulging with what Violet suspected were cookies saved for later. "Vi, can I go see the horses at the livery stable?" he asked. "Tommy said his pa would show us." Violet hesitated, looking to Owen for guidance. "Ned Franklin runs the livery," Owen explained. "He's a good man. If you're comfortable with it, Samuel would be safe with him." "Please, Vi." Samuel pleaded. "I'll be real careful." Violet relented. "All right, but stay with Mr. Franklin and be back here in half an hour." As Samuel darted off with his new friend, Owen offered Violet a cup of punch. "You're good with him," he observed, "firm but not overprotective." "It's a balance I'm still figuring out," Violet admitted. I want him to have a childhood, even with everything that's happened, but I also need to keep him safe. You're doing it right, Owen assured her. He's a happy boy despite the hardships. That's down to you. Before Violet could respond, a commotion at the door drew their attention. A man had entered, swaying slightly, his clothes dusty from the road. It took Violet a moment to recognize him as the bartender from the saloon she'd passed on her first day in Timber Creek. Parker. The man called, spotting Owen. Got a telegram for you. Ryder just brought it to town, said it was urgent. Owen frowned, crossing the room to take the folded paper. Violet watched as he read it, his expression growing serious. Everything all right? She asked when he returned to her side. Owen shook his head slightly. My sister's husband has been injured in a mining accident in Colorado. She's asking if I can come help. Oh, Owen, I'm so sorry, Violet said, genuine concern in her voice. Is it serious? Sounds like it. Broken leg, some internal injuries. She's got 3 young children, and the mine won't be paying him while he's laid up. Owen ran a hand through his hair, his distress evident. I need to go to her. Of course you do, Violet agreed immediately. When will you leave? First thing tomorrow, Owen said. But I don't know how long I'll be gone. A few weeks at least, maybe longer. He looked at her, worry creasing his brow. Which leaves you and Samuel in a difficult position. Violet hadn't thought of that, but he was right. The arrangement had been for her to work for Owen, not to be left alone on his property with his ranch hands. We can find other accommodations, she said, though the prospect of leaving the safety and stability they'd found at the ranch made her heart sink. No, Owen said firmly. That's not what I want. The ranch hands know their jobs, and Hank can oversee the operation while I'm gone, but I'd feel better knowing someone was looking after the house, keeping an eye on things. He hesitated. I'm asking if you'd stay, Violet. Continue as you have been. I'll make sure you have money for supplies, and the men will bring in whatever you need from town. Relief flooded through her. Are you certain? People might talk, me staying there alone with you gone. Owen's gaze traveled around the church hall, taking in the curious glances already being cast their way. Let them talk. I trust you, and I think you trust me enough to know I wouldn't suggest anything improper. His eyes returned to hers, serious and intent. Please stay. It would ease my mind considerably while I'm dealing with my sister's situation. Put that way, how could she refuse? We'll stay, Violet agreed, and I'll keep everything running smoothly until you return. The gratitude in Owen's eyes made that fluttering sensation return to her chest. Thank you, he said simply. As they gathered Samuel and prepared to return to the ranch, Violet found herself in a strange position. Just 2 weeks ago, she had been desperate enough to steal eggs from a stranger. Now, that same stranger was entrusting her with his home while he traveled hundreds of miles away. Life, it seemed, could change as quickly as the Wyoming weather, swift and unexpected, bringing storms or sunshine with equal suddenness. As she climbed into Owen's wagon for the ride home, Violet couldn't help but wonder what other changes might be on the horizon. Dawn was just breaking when Owen prepared to leave the next morning. Violet had risen early to make him a hearty breakfast and pack provisions for his journey. She worked quietly in the kitchen, trying not to wake Samuel, who was still asleep in their room. You didn't have to do all this, Owen said as he entered the kitchen, his saddlebags already packed and waiting by the door. Of course I did, Violet replied, placing a plate of eggs, bacon, and biscuits on the table. You've got a long ride ahead of you to catch that train in Cheyenne. Owen sat down, watching as she poured him coffee. I've left money in the drawer of my desk. Should be enough for supplies while I'm gone. And I've spoken to the men. They know you're in charge of the house and to help with anything you need. Violet nodded, taking the seat across from him. We'll be fine. Don't worry about things here, just focus on your sister and her family. Owen ate quickly, his mind clearly already on the journey ahead. When he finished, he pushed back from the table and stood. I should get going if I want to make good time. Violet walked him to the door, where he paused, seeming uncertain for the first time since she'd met him. "Thank you, Violet, for staying, for understanding." He hesitated, then added, "I'll write when I can, let you know how things are progressing." "We'll be here when you get back," she assured him, surprised by how much she meant it. Owen nodded, then did something unexpected. He reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently before raising it to his lips for a brief, almost brotherly kiss. "Take care of yourself," he said softly. "And Samuel." Before Violet could respond, he was gone, striding toward the barn where his horse was saddled and waiting. She watched from the porch as he mounted and rode away, raising his hand in a final farewell as he reached the edge of the property. Only when he had disappeared from sight did Violet realize she was still standing there, her hand tingling where his lips had touched it. "Where's Owen going?" Samuel's sleepy voice came from behind her. Violet turned to find her brother standing in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. "His sister needs his help," she explained, ushering the boy back inside. "He'll be gone for a while, but we're going to stay here and take care of the ranch until he comes back." Samuel's face fell slightly. "Will he be gone a long time?" "I'm not sure," Violet admitted, "but he promised to write to us." This seemed to satisfy Samuel, who quickly moved on to more immediate concerns like breakfast and whether he could help Joe with the horses again today. Violet was grateful for her brother's resilience as she set about her daily tasks, trying to ignore the strange emptiness the house seemed to have without Owen's presence. The days settled into a new rhythm. Violet continued to cook for the ranch hands, clean the house, and tend to the garden Owen had started but neglected. She found herself adding small touches to the home wildflowers in a jar on the table, curtains fashioned from spare fabric she discovered in a trunk, a more sensible arrangement of the kitchen tools. Small changes that made the house more comfortable, more lived in. Samuel thrived under the attention of the ranch hands, who seemed to enjoy having a boy around. Joe taught him to ride a gentle old mare, Hank showed him how to whittle, and Miguel let him help with the endless task of mending fences. Each evening, he would regale Violet with stories of his adventures, his eyes bright with excitement. 2 weeks after Owen's departure, the first letter arrived. Hank brought it back from town along with the supplies Violet had requested. She waited until Samuel was asleep before opening it, wanting a moment of privacy for whatever news it might contain. The letter was written in a strong, slightly uneven hand, as if Owen was more accustomed to roping cattle than penning correspondence. "Violet, I hope this finds you and Samuel well." The journey was uneventful, though longer than I would have liked. My sister, Elizabeth, and her family live in a small mining town called Silver Creek. It's a rough place, not somewhere I'd want to raise children, but choices are limited when following work. James, my brother-in-law, is doing better than expected. The doctor thinks he'll walk again, though it will be a long recovery. In the meantime, Elizabeth is stretched thin caring for him and their 3 little ones. I've been helping with the children and making repairs around their home, which was in poor condition even before James's accident. I find myself thinking of the ranch often, wondering how you and Samuel are faring. I trust Hank and the others are being respectful and helpful. If not, you have my permission to take my shotgun to them, though I doubt it will come to that. I hope to return within another month, but much depends on James's recovery and whether I can find someone reliable to help Elizabeth once I'm gone. Please give my regards to Samuel. Tell him the horses here are nothing compared to ours, and that I expect he'll be a proper cowboy by the time I return. Yours, Owen. Violet read the letter twice, smiling at his concern and the glimpse into his family life. Yours, he had signed it. A common enough closing, but seeing it in his handwriting gave it a weight she hadn't expected. She wrote back the next day, telling him about the day-to-day happenings at the ranch, Samuel's progress with riding, and the changes she'd made to the house, hoping he wouldn't mind. She kept her tone light and informative, ending with wishes for his brother-in-law's speedy recovery and assurances that everything at the ranch was running smoothly in his absence. As the weeks passed, more letters were exchanged. Owen's became longer, more personal, sharing stories from his childhood with Elizabeth, his concerns about her situation, even his frustrations with the mining company's treatment of injured workers. Violet found herself responding in kind, telling him about her parents, their farm in Nebraska, and her dreams for Samuel's future. Through this correspondence, Violet began to know Owen in a way that might have taken months in person. There was something about writing that allowed for a different kind of honesty, a sharing of thoughts that might have been too difficult to voice face to face. A month turned into 2. Summer gave way to early autumn, bringing cooler nights and golden light to the plains. Samuel started attending the local school, riding in with Joe each morning and returning in the afternoon, full of new knowledge and enthusiasm. Violet found herself settled into life at the ranch in a way she hadn't expected. The house felt like home, the routine comfortable and satisfying. The only thing missing was Owen himself, whose absence she felt more keenly than she cared to admit. His letters indicated that he would return soon, perhaps within the next few weeks. James was improving steadily, and Owen had arranged for a neighbor woman to help Elizabeth with the children and household tasks. Each time Violet read of his impending return, she felt that now familiar flutter in her chest, part anticipation, part anxiety. What would it be like when he came back? Would their relationship, deepened through letters, translate to their face-to-face interactions? And what exactly was their relationship becoming? Violet was pondering these questions one evening as she sat on the porch, enjoying the sunset after a long day of preserving the garden's final harvest. Samuel was inside, working on his school assignments under the light of the lamp, and the ranch hands had retired to their quarters after dinner. The sound of hoofbeats in the distance drew her attention. Visitors were rare, especially at this hour. Violet stood, shading her eyes against the setting sun as she tried to make out the approaching rider. There was something familiar about the silhouette, the way the man sat his horse. Her heart began to race as the rider drew closer, and when he was near enough for her to see his face, it skipped a beat entirely. Owen. He looked tired, his face leaner than when he'd left, but his eyes brightened when he saw her standing on the porch. He dismounted in one fluid motion, leading his horse the final distance to the house. "You're back," Violet said, the words inadequate for the rush of emotions she felt. "I'm back," Owen confirmed, his voice rough with fatigue but warm with pleasure at the sight of her. "Earlier than I expected." James took a turn for the better, and Elizabeth practically forced me to leave, said I was hovering too much. Violet laughed softly, understanding all too well the dynamic between siblings. She probably missed having her house to herself. "Probably," Owen agreed. He tied his horse to the porch rail and climbed the steps, stopping an arm's length from Violet. "The place looks good, better than when I left it." "I may have made a few changes," Violet admitted. "I hope you don't mind." "Mind." "Violet, this is the first time the ranch has felt like a home since my mother died." His gaze was intense, searching her face. "Your letters, they meant a great deal to me." Violet felt her cheeks warm, as did yours to me. They stood in silence for a moment, the air between them charged with unspoken things. It was Owen who finally broke it. "Is Samuel inside?" Violet nodded. "Doing his schoolwork. He'll be overjoyed to see you. He's asked about you every day." "And you?" Owen asked softly. "Did you think of me too?" The directness of the question took Violet by surprise. In their letters, they had approached the edges of such personal matters but never crossed the line so clearly. "Yes," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I did." Owen took a step closer, close enough that she could smell the dust of the trail on him, see the fatigue in the lines around his eyes. "I thought of you constantly," he confessed. "So much that Elizabeth teased me mercilessly about the mysterious woman who had captured my attention." Violet's breath caught. Owen. Samuel's excited shout interrupted whatever she had been about to say. The boy burst through the door and launched himself at the rancher, who caught him with a laugh. Whoa there, partner, you've grown at least 3 inches since I left. Samuel beamed up at him. I can ride Daisy all by myself now, and Joe says I'm a natural, and I'm going to school in town, and I know how to read almost as good as Violet. As well as Violet, she corrected automatically, her heart full at the sight of her brother's happiness. That's impressive, Owen said, ruffling Samuel's hair. You'll have to show me everything you've learned tomorrow, but right now, I think I need to get cleaned up and maybe have some of whatever smells so good coming from the kitchen. Violet made apple cobbler, Samuel informed him. It's the best thing ever. Owen's eyes met Violet's over the boy's head, a smile tugging at his lips. Is that so? Well, then I came home just in time. Home, the word hung in the air between them, simple but laden with meaning. Go inside and set another place at the table, Samuel, Violet instructed. Owen needs to see to his horse, and then we can all have dessert together. As Samuel darted back into the house, Owen's smile faded, replaced by something more serious. We need to talk, Violet. About the future. About what happens now. Violet nodded, her stomach tightening with anxiety. Despite their letters, despite the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her, she couldn't be certain what he wanted. Yes, we do, but not tonight. Tonight you should rest. We can talk tomorrow. Owen studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Tomorrow, then. He moved to untie his horse. I'll be back after I've seen to Brandy here. Violet watched him lead the tired animal toward the barn, her emotions a tangled mess of hope and fear. Tomorrow they would talk about the future, a future that, until Owen Parker found her stealing eggs from his henhouse, had seemed bleak and uncertain. Now, as she turned to go back inside, where Samuel was chattering excitedly about Owen's return, Violet allowed herself to consider a different possibility. A future here, at this ranch, with the man whose letters had gradually revealed a heart as vast as the Wyoming sky. But such thoughts were getting ahead of herself. Tomorrow would bring what it would, and until then, she had a hungry cowboy to feed and an excited brother to settle down for the night. Tomorrow came all too quickly. Violet woke before dawn from habit, her mind immediately turning to the conversation that lay ahead. She dressed quietly, careful not to wake Samuel, and made her way to the kitchen to start breakfast. To her surprise, Owen was already there, coffee brewing on the stove. He had shaved, she noticed, the strong line of his jaw no longer hidden beneath trail stubble. He looked more like the man she remembered, though his time away had left its mark in the new lines around his eyes and a certain gravity in his expression. You're up early, she said, pausing in the doorway. Owen turned at the sound of her voice, a smile warming his features. Couldn't sleep. Too used to rising with the sun, I suppose. He gestured to the coffee pot. Made enough for 2. Violet moved to the stove, accepting the cup he offered her. How does it feel to be back? Right, Owen said simply. Being away, it helped me see some things more clearly. Violet's heart quickened. Oh, Owen set his cup down, his expression turning serious. Violet, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. She nodded, bracing herself. Of course. Are you happy here, you and Samuel? The question was not what she had expected. Yes, she answered without hesitation. Happier than we've been since our parents died. Samuel is thriving and she paused, searching for the right words. I've found a purpose here, beyond just surviving. Owen's shoulders relaxed slightly, as if her answer had eased some tension he was carrying. That's good, because while I was away, I did a lot of thinking about the future, about what I want. Violet waited, hardly daring to breathe. I want you to stay, Owen continued. Not as my housekeeper, not as someone who works for me, but as... He faltered, then straightened his shoulders and met her gaze directly. I care for you, Violet, more than I expected to, more than I've cared for anyone in a very long time. And if there's any chance you might feel something similar, I'd like to court you properly. The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Violet's hand trembled slightly as she set her coffee cup beside his on the table. She took a deep breath. When you found me stealing eggs, I was at the lowest point of my life. I couldn't see a way forward, couldn't see how Samuel and I would survive another week. You didn't just offer us shelter and food, you gave us dignity, purpose, safety. She looked up at him, her green eyes clear and direct. At first, I was just grateful. But your letters, they showed me the man you truly are: kind, thoughtful, honorable. And yes, I've come to care for you too, very much. The smile that spread across Owen's face was like sunrise breaking over the plains, gradual, then all at once brilliant and warming. He took a step closer to her. So you'll stay, you'll let me court you? Violet nodded, her own smile blossoming. Yes to both. Owen reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle as they enfolded hers. There's something else, he said, his expression growing serious again. Something I need to make clear from the start. Violet tilted her head, waiting. Samuel, Owen said. He's part of this too. If I'm courting you, I'm committing to both of you. He deserves a good life, a chance to grow up without the fear and uncertainty you've both endured. I want to provide that for him, to be someone he can count on. Tears pricked at Violet's eyes. Of all the things Owen could have said, this touched her most deeply. He adores you already, she said softly. But yes, we're a package deal, Samuel and I. I wouldn't have it any other way, Owen assured her, his thumb tracing small circles on the back of her hand. We'll take things slowly, do this right, but I want you to know my intentions from the start. The moment was interrupted by the sound of Samuel's footsteps pounding down the hallway. He burst into the kitchen, still in his nightshirt, his hair standing up at odd angles. I smelled coffee, he announced, then stopped short when he saw Owen and Violet standing close together, hands joined. A knowing grin spread across his young face. Are you two getting married? Violet flushed crimson. Samuel, that's not, we're not, Owen laughed, releasing Violet's hand but staying close to her side. Not yet, partner, he told Samuel with a wink. But I am going to be spending a lot more time with you and your sister, if that's all right with you. Samuel considered this for a moment, then nodded decisively. That's all right, but you have to teach me to throw a lasso like Joe does. Deal, Owen agreed solemnly, extending his hand for Samuel to shake. As Violet watched them, her heart felt fuller than she had thought possible. Just weeks ago, she had been stealing eggs to feed her brother. Now, somehow, she found herself with the promise of a future, a home, and a man who wanted not just her, but the boy who was her whole world. It wasn't the life she had imagined for herself, but standing in the warm kitchen with the two people who mattered most to her, Violet couldn't imagine wanting anything more. The courtship began slowly, respectfully. Owen was careful to include Samuel in many of their activities, Sunday rides across the property, picnics by the creek when chores allowed, evenings reading together by the fire. But he also found moments for just the two of them. Dawn walks while Samuel still slept, quiet conversations on the porch after her brother was tucked in for the night. As autumn deepened toward winter, Owen asked Violet to accompany him to the harvest dance in Timber Creek. It would be their first public outing as a couple, and Violet found herself unexpectedly nervous as she prepared. You look beautiful, Samuel told her as she smoothed the skirt of her blue dress, the same one she'd worn to church that first Sunday, now adorned with a new lace collar she'd saved for weeks to purchase. Do I? Violet asked, twisting to check her appearance in the small mirror on the wall of their room. She had pinned her hair up in a style she'd seen in a magazine Mrs. Whittaker had lent her, though several copper tendrils had already escaped to frame her face. Owen's gonna think so, Samuel said with the easy confidence of childhood. He already looks at you like you're the prettiest thing ever, even when you're just cooking breakfast. Violet felt her cheeks warm. Does he now? Samuel nodded emphatically. Hank says Owen's got it bad. I heard him telling Joe. Samuel Keller, have you been eavesdropping on the men? Violet scolded, though she couldn't help the pleased flutter in her chest at the thought of Owen's regard being so obvious. Not on purpose, Samuel defended himself. They were talking by the corral while I was brushing Daisy. Before Violet could respond, there was a knock at the bedroom door. "Violet, the wagon's ready whenever you are," Owen called. "Coming," she replied, giving herself one final check in the mirror before turning to Samuel. "Now you be good for Hank. Straight to bed after supper and no convincing him to let you stay up late." I know," Samuel sighed dramatically. "You already told me 3 times. Violet smiled, dropping a kiss on the top of his head. "That's because I know exactly how persuasive you can be." When she emerged from the bedroom, Owen was waiting in the main room, dressed in his best clothes, a dark suit she'd never seen before, his boots polished to a shine. He held his hat in his hands, turning it nervously until he looked up and saw her. The hat stilled, and so, it seemed, did his breath. "Violet," he said, her name almost a reverence on his lips. "You look—" "Yes," she prompted when he didn't continue. Owen shook his head slightly, as if clearing it. "Beautiful doesn't seem adequate, but it's the only word that comes to mind." Behind her, Samuel made a gagging noise. "You two are worse than Tommy's older sister with her beau." Violet laughed, the tension broken. "Enough from you, young man. Off to the kitchen, Hank's waiting to have supper with you." As Samuel scampered off, Owen offered Violet his arm. "Shall we, Miss Keller?" The ride to town was pleasant, the evening air crisp, but not yet winter cold. Owen had placed heated bricks wrapped in flannel at their feet in the wagon, and a thick blanket covered their laps. Under its cover, his hand found hers, their fingers intertwining with a familiarity that still sent a thrill through Violet. The town hall was transformed for the harvest dance, decorated with autumn leaves, pumpkins, and golden bunting. A small band played in the corner, and couples already swirled around the dance floor as Owen and Violet entered. The curious glances they received were mostly friendly, though Violet noticed a few narrowed eyes among the town's unattached women. She supposed that was to be expected. Owen Parker had been considered one of the most eligible bachelors in the county, according to Mrs. Whittaker's gossip. "Owen, Violet, so glad you could make it," Mrs. Whittaker herself exclaimed, bustling over to greet them. "Don't you both look wonderful?" "Owen, I hardly recognized you without dust on your boots." Owen chuckled, his hand resting lightly at the small of Violet's back. "It does happen occasionally, Mrs. Whittaker. And Violet, dear, that dress is lovely on you. The blue brings out your eyes." The older woman leaned in conspiratorially. "You know, half the town has been placing bets on when Owen would finally bring you to a social event. I believe Doc Adams just won a tidy sum." Violet felt herself blush. "I had no idea we were the subject of such interest." "Oh, honey, in a town this size, a handsome rancher suddenly taking in a beautiful young woman and her brother. That's better entertainment than a traveling show." Mrs. Whittaker patted her arm, "But don't you worry, it's all good-natured. Everyone's just pleased to see Owen looking happy for a change." As Mrs. Whittaker moved on to greet other arrivals, Owen leaned down to murmur in Violet's ear. "Ignore her. Half of what she says is exaggeration." "Only half," Violet teased, relaxing slightly under his warm gaze. "Maybe 3/4, Owen conceded with a smile. "Now, would you do me the honor of a dance, Miss Keller?" Violet placed her hand in his. "I'd be delighted, Mr. Parker." The band was playing a lively reel, and Owen led her onto the dance floor with confidence. Violet had feared she might be rusty. It had been years since she'd danced at the county fair back in Nebraska, but Owen was a surprisingly skilled partner, guiding her through the steps with a sure hand at her waist. "Where did you learn to dance like this?" she asked as he spun her skillfully. "My mother insisted," Owen replied. "Said no son of hers was going to clod around a dance floor like a newborn calf. She made my father teach me and Elizabeth both." The image of a young Owen reluctantly learning dance steps made Violet smile. "I'm grateful to her foresight." As the evening progressed, they danced several more times, accepted congratulations from Owen's friends and acquaintances, and enjoyed the simple pleasure of being together in public as a couple. During a break in the dancing, Owen brought Violet a cup of punch and led her to a quieter corner of the hall. "Are you enjoying yourself?" he asked, his eyes searching her face. "Very much," Violet assured him, "though I'll admit all the attention is a bit overwhelming." Owen nodded understanding. Small towns, everyone knows everyone's business or thinks they should. He hesitated, then added, "If it's too much, we can leave early." "No," Violet said firmly. "This is nice being here with you. Besides, we have to give the gossips something worth talking about." A slow smile spread across Owen's face. "In that case." He set down their punch cups and held out his hand as the band struck up a waltz. "May I have this dance, Violet?" The waltz was more intimate than the earlier dances, bringing them closer together, his hand warm and steady at her waist. As they moved across the floor, Violet was acutely aware of every point of contact between them, of the admiring glances from onlookers, of the way Owen's eyes never left her face. "I never expected this," she said softly, too quietly for anyone but him to hear. "What?" Owen asked, his voice equally low. "Any of it. Being here with you, having a home again, seeing Samuel so happy." Violet's throat tightened with emotion. "When you found me stealing those eggs, I thought it was the worst day of my life, but it turned out to be the beginning of something wonderful." Owen's arm tightened slightly around her waist. "I thank God every day that you decided to rob my henhouse," he said, his eyes crinkling with the smile that Violet had come to cherish. "Best thing that ever happened to me." The waltz ended, and Owen led Violet off the dance floor toward the doors that opened onto the town hall's small veranda. The night air was cool after the warmth of the crowded hall, but Violet welcomed it against her flushed cheeks. They stood side by side at the railing, looking out at the quiet main street of Timber Creek, the stars brilliant in the clear night sky above. "Violet," Owen began, his voice serious, "there's something I want to ask you." She turned to face him, her heart suddenly racing. "Yes." Owen took both her hands in his. "These past months, having you and Samuel at the ranch, it's shown me what I was missing all those years alone. I don't want to go back to that emptiness." Violet's breath caught as Owen reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "I know we haven't known each other long, by some standards," he continued, "but I know my own heart, and it belongs to you, Violet Keller. I want to build a life with you and Samuel to give you both the security and happiness you deserve." He opened the box, revealing a delicate gold ring with a small but perfect diamond. "Will you marry me?" Tears sprang to Violet's eyes as emotions washed over her: joy, disbelief, and above all, love for this man who had changed her life with a simple act of kindness. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Owen, I will marry you." Owen's face broke into a smile of such radiant happiness that it took Violet's breath away. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, his lips finding hers in their first kiss tender, reverent, and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Violet." "I think I have since that first morning when you stood your ground despite being caught red-handed." Violet laughed softly. "I was terrified you were going to have me arrested." "Never," Owen assured her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Even then, all I wanted was to protect you." "And now," Violet asked, her eyes meeting his. "Now I want to love you for the rest of my life," Owen replied simply. "You and Samuel both." Violet reached up to touch his face, still hardly believing that this was real. "I love you too, Owen Parker, more than I ever thought possible." They returned to the dance, Violet's ring catching the light as they moved across the floor. The news spread quickly through the hall, nods and smiles from the men, excited whispers from the women. By the time they left, Mrs. Whittaker had already begun discussing wedding plans, and Dr. Adams had offered his own home for the ceremony if the church is too much fuss. The ride home was quiet, both of them wrapped in the glow of their new engagement. When they reached the ranch, Owen helped Violet down from the wagon, then surprised her by sweeping her into his arms for another kiss, more passionate than the first. "I've been wanting to do that all evening," he confessed when they parted, both breathless. "You should have," Violet replied, her hands resting on his chest. Though Mrs. Whittaker might have fainted from the scandal, Owen laughed, the sound rich in the quiet night. "Let her faint. I'm going to be kissing my wife whenever I please once we're married." "Your wife," Violet repeated, testing the word. "It still doesn't seem real." "It's real," Owen assured her, taking her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "As real as this ranch, as real as my love for you and Samuel." Inside, they found Hank dozing in a chair by the fire, a book open on his lap. He startled awake as they entered, taking in their clasped hands and Violet's flushed, happy face. "Well?" he asked, looking expectantly at Owen. "She said yes," Owen confirmed, his pride evident. Hank broke into a wide grin. "About time. The boys and I were starting to think you'd lost your nerve." He stood, offering Violet a slight bow. "Congratulations, Miss Violet. You couldn't have picked a better man, though God knows you could have picked a smarter one." Violet laughed at Owen's mock, offended expression. "Thank you, Hank. Is Samuel—" "Sleeping like a log," Hank assured her. "Wore himself out helping me muck out the stables. Said he wanted to be useful like a real ranch hand." Violet shook her head fondly. "That sounds like him." "Thank you for watching him." "Anytime, Miss Violet. That boy's a pleasure to have around." Hank collected his hat from the table. "I'll leave you two to your evening. Congratulations again." After Hank had gone, Owen built up the fire while Violet checked on Samuel, finding him indeed fast asleep, one arm flung over his head, his face peaceful in the glow of the banked lamp. When she returned to the main room, Owen was waiting on the sofa, his arm extended in invitation. Violet joined him, curling against his side as if she had been doing so for years rather than for the first time. "When should we tell Samuel?" she asked, her head resting on Owen's shoulder. "Tomorrow," Owen suggested, "though I'm fairly certain he already knows what I was planning." "He helped me pick out the ring." Violet sat up in surprise. "He did," Owen nodded, smiling at her reaction. "I asked for his permission first, told him I wanted to marry his sister and become his brother. He said he'd prefer if I was his father instead." Tears welled in Violet's eyes again. "Oh, Owen." "I told him that would be up to you both in time," Owen continued, drawing her back against him. "But that I'd be honored if he ever wanted that." Violet couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. Instead, she turned her face up to his, communicating her feelings in a kiss that left no doubt about the depth of her love. As they sat together before the fire, planning their future in quiet voices, Violet marveled at the twists and turns that had led her to this moment. From the desperate young woman stealing eggs at dawn to the loved and cherished bride-to-be, her journey had been one of unexpected blessings. And it had all begun with a simple act of kindness from a cowboy who had seen past her crime to the need behind it, who had offered not just food for her brother but a place to stay, a home, and ultimately, his heart. "What are you thinking about?" Owen asked, noticing her contemplative expression. Violet smiled up at him, her heart full. "I was thinking that sometimes the darkest moments lead us to the brightest futures. If I hadn't been desperate enough to steal those eggs, we might never have met," Owen finished for her. "Though I like to think fate would have found another way to bring you to me." "Perhaps," Violet agreed, "but I'm grateful it happened as it did, even if I was mortified at the time." Owen pressed a kiss to her forehead. "So am I, Violet, so am I." Outside, the stars continued their silent vigil over the Wyoming plains, witnessing the beginning of a love story that had started with stolen eggs and a cowboy's unexpected offer. "You can take the hen and stay too." The wedding took place on a crisp December morning, with fresh snow blanketing the ground outside the small church in Timber Creek. Despite Violet's protests that she wanted something simple, the entire town had turned out for the occasion. Mrs. Whittaker had taken charge of the decorations, festooning the church with evergreen boughs and red berries, while the ladies of the quilting circle had prepared a feast for the celebration afterward. Samuel, dressed in a new suit that Owen had ordered specially from Cheyenne, stood proudly beside them as Dr. Adams gave the bride away. The boy's face was solemn during the ceremony, but his eyes shone with happiness as he watched his sister, and the man who would soon be his brother or perhaps, someday, his father exchange their vows. I, Owen James Parker, take thee, Violet me Keller, to be my lawfully wedded wife. Owen's voice was clear and steady, his eyes never leaving Violet's face as he repeated the words after Preacher Williams. To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. Violet's voice trembled slightly as she spoke her own vows, overcome by the moment and the journey that had brought them here. I, Violet me Keller, take thee, Owen James Parker, to be my lawfully wedded husband. To have and to hold from this day forward for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. The simple gold band that Owen slipped onto her finger gleamed alongside her engagement ring, symbols of a promise that had begun with an act of compassion and grown into something neither of them had expected. By the power vested in me, Preacher Williams concluded, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride, Owen. Owen's kiss was gentle but filled with promise, his hands cradling Violet's face as if she were the most precious thing in the world. When they turned to face the congregation as husband and wife, Samuel launched himself at them both, wrapping an arm around each of their waists. We're a family now, right? He asked, looking up at them with hope written across his young face. Yes, Samuel, Owen confirmed, resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. We're a family. The celebration that followed was joyous and boisterous, with music and dancing lasting well into the evening. Mrs. Whitaker shed tears during her toast to the couple, recalling how she'd known from the first moment she saw them together at church that they were destined for each other. Anyone with eyes could see it, she declared, raising her glass. The way Owen looked at Violet like she'd hung the moon, and the way she tried not to look back at him the same way but couldn't help herself. Laughter rippled through the crowd as Violet blushed, and Owen squeezed her hand under the table. As the party continued around them, Owen leaned close to his new wife. Ready to go home, Mrs. Parker. The name still felt strange to Violet's ears, but wonderfully right. Yes, she replied, glancing to where Samuel was playing with the other children, his earlier formality forgotten in the excitement of the celebration. Though I hate to take Samuel away from the fun. Actually, Owen said with a small smile, I've arranged for him to stay with Hank tonight. The man practically insisted, said it was his wedding gift to us. Understanding dawned on Violet's face, bringing a blush to her cheeks. Oh, Owen's eyes softened. We don't have to leave yet if you'd rather stay, I just thought. No, Violet said quickly. I'd like to go home with you. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, a gentle tension building between them with each mile. Owen had prepared the house before they left for the ceremony, banking fires in the main room and bedroom so the house would be warm upon their return. He had also, Violet discovered, scattered flower petals across their bed, a touch so unexpectedly romantic that it brought tears to her eyes. The general store had dried rose petals from back east, Owen explained, suddenly looking uncertain. Mrs. Thompson said it was traditional, but if it's silly, Violet silenced him with a kiss. It's not silly, it's beautiful. Their first night together as husband and wife was tender and passionate, a culmination of the love that had grown between them over the past months. Afterward, as they lay entwined beneath the quilts, Violet rested her head on Owen's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Happy? He asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. More than I ever thought possible, Violet admitted. When my parents died, I thought that was the end of happiness for me, that my life would just be struggle and worry, trying to keep Samuel safe and fed. She propped herself up on one elbow to look at her husband's face. "You changed everything, Owen." He reached up to touch her cheek. "You changed everything for me too, Violet. This house was just a place to sleep before you came. Now it's a home." In the morning, Samuel returned, bursting with excitement over his night with Hank, who had apparently told him all manner of ranch stories that Owen had never heard before. The three of them settled into life as a family with surprising ease, as if they had always been meant to be together. Spring brought new life to the ranch calves in the pastures, chicks in the henhouse, and the news that Violet was expecting a child of her own. Owen's reaction to the announcement was everything she could have hoped for, his face lighting up with joy before he swept her into a careful embrace. "A baby," he whispered against her hair. "Our baby." Samuel's response was equally enthusiastic, though tempered with practical questions that made Owen and Violet exchange amused glances. "Where will the baby sleep?" he wanted to know. "And who's going to take care of it when Violet's cooking? Babies need a lot of attention, you know, Mrs. Williams at school says they cry all the time." "We'll figure it all out," Owen assured him. "That's what families do." As Violet's pregnancy progressed, Samuel became increasingly protective of his sister, reminding her to rest and bringing her glasses of water without being asked. He also spent hours with Owen, learning more about the ranch operations, proud to be taking on more responsibility now that Violet needs to take care of the baby. One evening in late summer, as Violet sat on the porch sewing tiny clothes for the baby, Samuel approached her with a serious expression on his face. "Vi," he began, using the nickname he'd called her since he first learned to speak, "I've been thinking about something important." Violet set aside her sewing. "What is it, Samuel?" The boy fidgeted with the hem of his shirt. "When the baby comes, it's going to call you Ma and Owen Pa, right?" "If that's what we teach it, yes," Violet agreed, beginning to understand the direction of his thoughts. "Well, I was thinking." Samuel took a deep breath. "I'd like to call Owen Pa too, and for him to be my pa, not just my brother. Is that allowed?" Violet's heart swelled with emotion. "Of course it's allowed if that's what you want and if Owen agrees." "If Owen agrees to what?" The man himself appeared in the doorway behind them, dusty from a day working with the cattle. Samuel turned to him, his expression still serious. "I want you to be my pa, for real, not just married to Violet, but my actual father." Owen's face softened as he knelt down to the boy's level. "Samuel, nothing would make me prouder than to be your pa. But you know that wouldn't change anything about your real father, right? He'll always be a part of you, even though he's gone." Samuel nodded solemnly. "I know. But he'd want me to have a pa here to teach me things and take care of me and Violet, and you already do those things." "Then it's settled," Owen said, his voice rough with emotion. "From now on, I'm your pa." Samuel's face broke into a wide smile before he threw his arms around Owen's neck. "Thanks, Pa." Owen held the boy tightly, his eyes meeting Violet's over Samuel's shoulder. The love she saw there for her brother, for their unborn child filled her with a contentment so deep, it was almost overwhelming. That night, as they lay in bed together, Owen's hand resting protectively over the swell of Violet's stomach, she told him about a dream she'd had. "I saw my parents," she said softly. "Not clearly, more like shadows or impressions, but they were smiling and I knew they were at peace, I think. I think they're happy for us, Owen. For this family we're building." Owen pressed a kiss to her temple. "I believe they are, Violet, and I promise you I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of the trust they would have placed in me, caring for you and Samuel." "You already are," Violet assured him, placing her hand over his where it rested on her belly. "More than worthy." 2 months later, as the first snow of winter dusted the Wyoming plains, Violet gave birth to a daughter they named Elizabeth Rose, after Owen's sister and Violet's mother. The baby had Owen's blue eyes and a dusting of copper hair that promised to be as vibrant as her mother's. Samuel was enchanted with his baby sister from the moment Owen placed her carefully in his arms, instructing him on how to support her head. "She's so tiny," he marveled. But don't worry, Lizzie. I'm going to teach you everything when you get bigger. How to ride a horse and lasso a calf and all sorts of things. As Violet watched her family, her husband beaming with pride, her brother gentle with his new sister, her daughter peaceful in Samuel's careful embrace, she thought back to that desperate dawn when she'd reached through the slats of a henhouse, hoping only to steal enough eggs to feed her brother for another day. Instead, she had found so much more: a home, a love, a family. All because a kind-hearted cowboy had looked beyond her crime to see her need, and had offered not just eggs but a place to stay, a chance at happiness, and ultimately his heart. "What are you thinking about?" Owen asked, noticing her thoughtful expression as he sat beside her on the bed, one arm curled protectively around her and the baby. Violet smiled up at him, her heart full to bursting with love for this man and the life they had built together. "I was thinking that sometimes the most desperate moments can lead to the greatest blessings," she said, "and that I'm thankful every day that you caught me stealing your eggs." Owen leaned down to kiss her, his lips gentle against hers. "So am I, Violet, so am I." Outside, snow continued to fall softly on the Parker Ranch, where a family born of kindness, need, and love had found their happy ending, all because of stolen eggs and a cowboy's generous heart. Years passed, seasons changing in their eternal cycle across the Wyoming plains. The Parker Ranch prospered under Owen's careful management, expanding as he was able to purchase neighboring land when it became available. Samuel grew from a curious boy into a capable young man, following in Owen's footsteps with a natural talent for ranching and a deep love for the land. Elizabeth Rose, or Lizzie as everyone called her, blossomed into a spirited child with her mother's copper hair and her father's thoughtful nature. More children joined the family. Twins James and William 3 years after Lizzie, and finally, little Sarah, who arrived when Violet was beginning to think their family was complete. Each birth brought new joy to the house that had once stood empty and silent before Violet's arrival. On the 10th anniversary of the day Owen had caught Violet stealing eggs, the family gathered for a special dinner. The dining room and addition Owen had built when the twins were born was filled with laughter and conversation as Samuel, now 18, recounted the story to his younger siblings. And then Vi said, "My brother is hungry," and Owen just handed her the eggs and said, "Take the hen and stay too." Samuel's voice deepened in imitation of Owen, making the children giggle. "I did not sound like that," Owen protested good-naturedly, his arm around Violet's shoulders as they sat side by side at the head of the table. "You kind of did, Pa," Samuel insisted with a grin. "You were trying to be all stern and intimidating, but Vi saw right through you." Violet laughed, leaning into her husband's embrace. "I certainly did not. I was terrified he was going to have me arrested." "As if I would," Owen scoffed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Best day of my life, finding you at my henhouse. Even better than when the twins were born." 9-year-old Lizzie challenged, always quick to test her father's declarations. "Or when you got that prize bull at the county fair," added 7-year-old James. "Or when Samuel won the roping contest?" William, James's twin and constant companion, chimed in. "Even better than all of those," Owen confirmed solemnly. "Because without that day, none of the rest would have happened." Later that evening, after the children were in bed, and Samuel had ridden into town to meet friends, Owen and Violet sat on the porch swing that had become their favorite place for quiet moments together. The ranch spread out before them. Peaceful in the moonlight, the barn Owen had rebuilt after a lightning strike 5 years ago, the expanded corrals, the garden Violet had cultivated with loving care. "Hard to believe it's been 10 years, Owen said, his arm around his wife as they swayed gently in the cool evening air. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday," Violet agreed. "Other times it's as if I've always been here, always been yours." Owen's fingers tangled in her hair, still the vibrant copper that had first caught his attention that fateful morning. "You have always been mine," he said softly. "Even before we met, I was just waiting to find you." Violet turned her face up to his, still moved by the depth of his love after all these years. "And I was walking toward you, even when I didn't know where I was going." Their kiss was sweet and familiar, yet still held the spark that had ignited between them during their courtship. When they parted, Owen reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "I have something for you," he said, "for our anniversary." Curious, Violet opened the box to find a delicate gold locket. When she pressed the tiny clasp, it opened to reveal a miniature painting of their family on one side, and on the other, something unexpected, a small, perfect white feather. "From a hen?" Violet asked, laughing softly as she realized the significance. Owen nodded, his eyes warm with love and memories. "From the very one you were trying to steal from, as a matter of fact. Old Speckle lived a good long life, and when she passed last spring, I saved this, to remind us where it all began." Tears pricked at Violet's eyes as she closed the locket and let Owen fasten it around her neck. "It's perfect," she whispered, "just like the life we've built together." Owen drew her close again, his lips brushing her forehead. "Not perfect," he corrected gently. "Real. With hard work and worry and the occasional argument, but wonderful all the same." Violet couldn't disagree. There had been difficult times. The year drought had threatened the herd, the scarlet fever that had nearly taken Lizzie, the fire that destroyed the original barn. But through it all, they had faced each challenge together, their love and commitment to each other and their family never wavering. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd chosen a different henhouse that morning?" Owen asked, his voice contemplative. "If you'd gone to the Fletcher place instead, or the Millers?" Violet considered the question. "I think about it sometimes," she admitted. "Mr. Fletcher probably would have had me arrested on the spot, and Mrs. Miller would have fed me and Samuel until we burst, then sent us on our way with baskets of food." "But not offered you a place to stay," Owen finished for her. "No," Violet agreed. "That was uniquely you, Owen Parker. Only you would look at a desperate woman stealing your eggs and see someone worth taking a chance on." Owen smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling in the way that still made Violet's heart skip. "I saw more than that," he corrected. "I saw courage, determination, and a love for your brother that moved me. I saw a woman I wanted to know better, even in that first moment. And now you know me better than anyone ever has," Violet said softly. "And love you more with each passing day," Owen completed the thought. As they sat together in the gathering darkness, the locket warm against Violet's skin, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From desperate poverty to comfortable prosperity, from strangers to soulmates, from a woman and boy alone in the world to the center of a loving, thriving family, all because of stolen eggs and a cowboy's generous heart. "What shall we do for the next 10 years?" Violet asked, half teasing, half serious. Owen pretended to consider. "Well, Samuel will probably marry that Fletcher girl he's been sweet on, so there might be grandchildren to spoil. The twins will continue to cause mischief and keep us on our toes. Lizzie will either become a famous horse trainer or the first female doctor in Wyoming Territory, depending on which ambition is currently stronger. And little Sarah will wrap us all around her finger even more than she already has." Violet laughed. "And us? What about us, Owen?" His expression grew serious, though his eyes remained warm. "We'll keep building this life together, Violet. Keep loving each other through whatever comes. Keep remembering how fortunate we are to have found each other that morning at the henhouse." "I like that plan," Violet said, settling more comfortably against his side as the stars continued their eternal dance above the Wyoming plains. In the distance, a coyote called to its mate, the sound echoing across the land that had become their home. Inside the house, their children slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that they were loved. And on the porch, Owen and Violet Parker held each other close, grateful for the twist of fate that had brought a desperate young woman to steal eggs for her hungry brother, and had given a lonely cowboy the chance to say 7 words that changed both their lives forever. "You can take the hen and stay too,"